I'm Lori Saunders-Hillman, President and Chief Operating Officer for Plain State Bank. We are proud to be partners in presenting today's webinar. We are in the business of helping small business. As one of the top producers for SBA Loans in Houston, we are committed to helping businesses through this pandemic. By assisting you through this Paycheck Protection Program, we want to help your business turn the corner through this challenging time and chart a path for success. Please visit us at psbplains.com for more information on how to apply for a PPP loan.
Okay, so you should be able to see that SBA slide now. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through for you just a little bit about what's happening right now for economic relief for small businesses. I'll go through a few different things. What really matters is those things in numbers in the middle. I'm going to go over a summary of what is called for the Economic Relief Act. Now remember, when there's an act that's passed by Congress and signed by the President, then it goes to the agency that needs to implement it. We are now in the process of implementing that. Some of that is already started. Some of it won't start until perhaps early next month. So as we go through, I'll give you what to expect. First, and this is very importantly, if you go to that website that's on the screen, that's my website here in Houston, and sign up for our emails, that's on the bottom right-hand side. As soon as we know enough to teach you how to proceed with any of this that I'm going to go over today, we will be doing detailed webinars on those exact topics. For instance, if you wanted to do a second draw PPP, or if you want to pursue the Shuttered venue grant, we're going to have webinars exactly on that. So if you go there and sign up, then we will be able to tell you when we're doing it. So that you know, and you don't have to pay much attention to this page, but everything I'm going to be talking about is already published, either in the actual act itself or in some of these highlighted items that are the new forms and guidances, as we call them, that instruct lenders and the public on how to pursue these sources of financial relief. So let's get right into it. The budget that the Economic Relief Act gives us is $284.45 billion. I've gotten to the point these days when I don't even notice I'm saying billion or million. But really important for you to know, and this is really important, is that there are what we call set-asides. So there are chunks of this money that are already allocated and will only be able to go to these parties. $15 billion just to businesses that get funded through either community development financial organizations or minority depository institutions. Transpired, those organizations are able to accept PPP applications right now. In fact, that's for both the first draw and second draw PPPs. $35 billion is set aside for first-time borrowers. So that's carved out. The others can't have that. And of that, $15 billion is just for the small, less than 10 employee firms or loans that are less than $250,000 coming from a low-income area. There's also $25 billion set aside just with the same parameters for second draw PPP. So that's great news that that money is set aside specifically just for those organizations so they can get their fair share to support their businesses. Now, 25 days, and that's roughly going to be probably the first week in February, maybe later, we may be able to adjust those set aside. So if people aren't taking that money, then we want to make it available to whoever needs it so that we can help support the economy. So that might get adjusted. So the story there is if you fall into one of these groups, go ahead and get going because we've set that money aside just for you. There's $20 billion set aside for a targeted grant program, and I'll talk to you about that. Probably, well, I'm not going to say no one here will be eligible, but it's a much smaller group than. And then there's $15 billion set aside for live venues that have been affected by COVID. So let me get into the details. First draw PPP. Well, before I show you this busy screen, I'll just remind you, the Paycheck Protection Program loan, it's up to $10 million. The loan amount is based on your average monthly payroll in the year before you applied for the loan. So you take your average monthly payroll, you multiply that times 2.5, and that's the amount of your loan. And that's about as complicated as it gets. You can work with a local lender. There are also lots of online lenders, internet lenders that are doing PPP loans. Here in the Houston area, it's roughly 1,000 lenders that have participated so far. So with that background, you get that loan, 2.5 times your monthly payroll, 60% must be used for paychecks. That's only to employees, that's not for 1099s. 1099, they can get their own PPP loans. You can't get one for them. So it's 60% until now. 40% until now was just to be able to help pay your rent, your mortgage interest, and your utilities. It's signatures, that's what software, cloud computing, human resources, and accounting needs. That will help cover property damages due to public disturbances, and hopefully there'll be no riots in your business that will cause damage. Supplier costs. So you got to look at this. This could be funded a little bit more, but it's for contracts or purchase orders in effect prior to taking out the loan. Remember, it's only 40%. That's the maximum of your loan that you can use for these costs. And then finally, it allows you to start worker protective equipment, not just gloves, but this will pay for plexiglass barriers or maybe drive-through or other things like that. And we can, in the Act, it specifies what some of those are, but there will be some more documentation coming out from the SBA soon that lets you understand the details behind that. But that also is good news. The final element down there, called Section 6, says that you can choose to spend it between 8 or 24 weeks. We call that your covered period. So you choose how long you want to take in order to spend that money. It used to be 8 or 24 weeks. Your insurance costs, your group insurance costs, that's part of payroll. There will be the a voluntary portion to look for demographics. So that lets us understand who is accessing the money. If it doesn't get filled out, then we will never know. And then the businesses that apply have to have been in operation on February 15th of 2020. We have people call us and say, I opened my business April 1st of 2020. How do I access a PPP loan? Unfortunately, the answer is you don't. You are not eligible. And then the final thing on this page that's down at the bottom, Section 12, that basically says if you applied or anybody you know applied for PPP, you were approved, and then you chose not to receive the money. Or let's say you were approved for $10 million, but you chose to only receive $1 million. You didn't want the whole $10 million. And now you need money. Well, this says you go back to your PPP loan with initially, and you can now get that money. So that's basically what that says. It also says we have 17 days to start that program. 17 days will be, I think it'll be Monday. There's a little expanded eligibility for the firms that can apply for a PPP loan now. So you can now apply for one. A 501c6 Chamber of Commerce can apply, as can a destination marketing organization. So that's like your Convention and Visitors Bureau. You can receive no more than 50% of your receipts from lobbying, can spend no more than 50% of time on lobbying, and your lobbying activities can't exceed $1 million. Also, you can't have more than 300 employees. So as long as you meet those stipulations, then you're eligible for the PPP. And then the final thing on this page points out that publicly traded companies are no longer eligible. They were eligible in the first round. So you've all heard last year about publicly traded companies that accessed PPP loans. Well, that is no longer possible for them to do. Also, FCC license holders, so that's television stations, radio stations, as well as newspapers can now access PPP loans. So that was a quick review of what we now call first draw PPP. Now, if you've already had a PPP loan, even if you're not done spending it, you may apply for a second draw PPP. Remember I told you that PPP is up to $10 million. Well, the second draw is a maximum of $2 million. There's more with eligibility. With PPP, essentially 5.5. Well, now with the second draw, you have to certify that you have no more than 300 employees and that you have had a 25% reduction in the gross receipts or sales revenue of your business. when compared quarter to quarter. So it'd be quarter 1, 2019 or 120, or quarter 3, 2019, quarter 20. If you're in operation for all of those, then you may compare year to year. But as long as you can demonstrate 25% reduction or more, that's an important hurdle that you have to be able to cross. As you apply as a facility for PPP, and you recognize you're going to need more, you can go ahead and contact your lender and tell them you want to do a PPP. Now, except for those minority deposit institutions and community development institutions that I mentioned, normal bankers and lenders are not able to submit those loan applications yet to the SBA. They will soon. What we're going to do is we're going to be inviting waves, if you want to think of it that way, to start accepting applications and send them to the SBA. We have not started that yet. That should start next week. This week on those underserved businesses, working with the institutions and the minority deposit institutions. There are some exclusions down at the bottom. They probably apply to then you won't be eligible. If you are affiliated with People's Republic of China or a registrant under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, you will not be eligible. Also, and we'll talk about this again, if you have received a shuttered venue grant, you are not eligible for PPP. There are a few more details that are really important. The one that I think is important, the most important maybe on this page, right there in green. If you are an accommodation or food service business, then when you apply for a second draw, you don't multiply your average wages by 2.5, you do. So you're able to do a 3.5 times loan. So that's great news. With employees, and in the case of a multiple location business, it's 300 employees per location. To elaborate more on that 3.5, that's for any business classified under Section 2 of the North American Industrial Classification System, or NAICS. So go to www.naics.com. You can confirm whether your business is there. But bottom line, it'll be some kind of an accommodation or food service business. One of the questions that I'm getting is, Tim, I have PPP to work with on your PPP. They have your file. It should be relatively simple for them to dust that off and help your second round PPP. If you did not like your lender the first time, as I mentioned, a lot of lenders doing PPP loans. While those are wonderful businesses run by wonderful people that we all love, their specialty is large volumes of electronic transactions. Their specialty usually is not large volumes of customer phone calls. If you have service, you go through a second PPP, you might consider using one of the local communities. They tend to have a little more capability to help you in that respect. It's not going to be, in most cases, the customer service you're used to, because for every one of you applying, there could easily be 4 or 5 or 10,000 others applying at that bank. But still 10,000 compared to some of those internet lenders that might be doing 50,000 or 100,000 loans. So the scale here is one of the issues. So if you weren't happy with your lender the first time, you can switch to a different lender. It might take you a little more time, but it might be of a benefit to you. And important parts about the second draw PPP. So to really fast recap, PPP up to $10 million, must be spent for paychecks, not 90% may be spent for expenses. It is 100% on paychecks. It's 60% or more. You must spend at least 60%. You calculated 2.5 times for average monthly payroll. If you are in accommodations or food service, it's 3.5 times. Finally, as I mentioned, these loans have to be forgiven. You have to demonstrate that you didn't reduce or more. So that's another factor in forgiveness, and I don't think it's really reflected anywhere here. That applied for the first round PPP that applies now. So speaking of forgiveness, there are a couple of small changes, but maybe very important changes to forgiveness. On the bottom of the screen is the one I'd like to highlight first, called Section 30. For anyone that received the EIDL grant, the CARES Act required us to subtract that from your PPP forgiveness. That has been repealed. So now, if you received an EIDL grant, it's yours. Don't worry about it. You don't have to subtract it from forgiveness. If anyone you know, or if you already applied for forgiveness and it will be added back. It will be back. It has been green, called Section 7. Says that there will be a one-page form, and it will probably be available roughly by the end of the month, that will allow borrowers with $150,000 or less as their loan amount to use an accelerated forgiveness process. I don't know what that means yet. We'll have to wait and see. But if you want to get an idea of what it might mean, it's Form 3508S you can look at on our website. That was for $50,000 or less. So to be something like that, but it'll go up 150,000. This is significant for a few reasons, but maybe the most notable reason is that loans under 150,000 constitute about 80%, I believe, of all of the loans done in the Houston district. So that 80% of the small businesses out there will be able to do a really forgiveness process that's not real scary. So that's really, really good news. We're just gonna have to wait and see the details. Now let's talk about economic injury disaster loans. Do a quick recap of those before we start. These loans are only for businesses that have been injured by the economy. So that means that you have had some kind of an impact to your revenues as a result of COVID. If so, this is a great loan. It will go for 25 years at a 3.75% interest rate. The money that you get lent, it can be used in a lot of purposes. Mainly, it's for keeping your business open. So you can't go buy a bunch of new things. You can't buy a new business or a new truck or a new bass boat, but you use it on your business for your normal business expenditures, and they're up to $150,000 at the moment. That could change. I don't believe it will, but that could change. But they do have a limit right now of $150,000. You can go to SBA's website and you can apply for those loans through December 31st of this year. Now, do let me comment. There is a limited amount of money available for all of this, and also for the EIDL loans. So if we run out of money, let's say by June, Congress doesn't give us more money for the EIDL program, then even though this says you can apply until December 31st, it's going to stop in June or July or May or whenever the money might run out. So just be aware that's not a guarantee that money will be available all the way until the end of the year. It means that is our intention as long as the money lasts. Now let's talk about the economic injury grants. In the CARES Act, we were asked to grant $10,000 to businesses that applied for it to help them through COVID. To make that money last, we permuted that and made it be $1,000 per employee, maximum of $10,000. That's important to know. And we stopped, the money ran out altogether. We stopped accepting applications for that. I think it was back in August. Well, what we are going to do now is for those that applied and never received a grant and are located in low-income communities, we will be sending those folks an email telling them they will now be getting $10,000. And I'm sure we're going to be doing something like working out, making sure we have the right account number and routing symbol so that we can send the money to you. If you are in a low-income community, you applied for the grant and you didn't get the full 10,000. Let's say you just got 3,000. Then you will also be getting an email saying we would now like to give you the remaining balance on that EIDL grant. So this will only be for people that have already applied and are in low-income communities. Now, the IRS defines a low-income community, and I don't have that on this page, as somewhere with at least 20% of the population being below the poverty line, or a census tract in which 80%, which 80%, I need to go look that up. Well, that's important. So let me get that right in front of me real quickly. Well, actually, I've closed that. It says that the average person in that census tract income is less than 80%, their family income is less than 80% of the statewide average. Or if it's a metro community, then it's less than 80% of the metro average. So that's the definition. Okay. So it's possible. People ask me, yeah, but Tim, I really want to apply for this and I'm in a low income area. What do I do? The answer is you cannot apply for it. There is no way for you to apply for it. However, if we take care of the folks that already apply and there's money left, then it's completely possible it may be reopened for new applications. But I don't know that that's going to happen, and I can't give you the odds that would happen, but it's possible. Let's talk about the shuttered venue grants. This is a terrific program. There's $15 billion budget, that's with a B, to make grants to live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations, museum operators, motion picture theaters, and talent representatives who demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in revenues. So you will have to demonstrate 25% or more reduction in revenues. And $2 billion of total is set aside only for the smallest entities, those with fewer than 50 full-time employees, and that $2 billion will stay for at least 60 days. So that's really significant. So those smaller venues like this you know of, encourage them to go ahead and get ready to apply because they want to get their share. The grant can be $10 million. No, hopefully it's obvious. That would be to the larger organizations with the greatest impact, but it can be up to $10 million. And then you may get a second grant. If you spend the first grant and you still need help, the second grant will be limited to no more than 50% of the first grant. So that's a theoretical maximum of 15 million. Here's the way it's going to work. Once this program starts, and it should not start until probably the first week in February. I don't know any secrets. I don't know that that's the fact, but it looks like that's when it will probably occur because we're having to invent this system. And it seems like everything's going to line up for it to start the first week in February. Assuming that it does, then February 1st through February 14th, 14 days, will be only for those businesses that can demonstrate a 90% or greater revenue loss. So that's the worst impacted of all sizes. The remaining 14 days of February will be for those that can demonstrate a 70% or greater revenue loss. Everyone else will be after those two 14-day periods. So that puts us out in March before, let's say there's one of these venues in your area that has a 50% reduction in revenue. They would have to wait until March before they can apply. So they could consider going for a PPP. It's up to $10 million, and it might be just as useful to them. So that's something to consider if they haven't had the same degree of impact. There is one big difference, and this is the third to the last bullet here, is that the expenses for this grant can be broader than for PPP. It's still relatively narrow. It's just those critical expenses to keep the place operable. Can't do anything new, can't go out and buy this or invest this and try to make money on it or anything else. It's only for keeping the venue open. And then the second to the last bullet tells you that there will be increased oversight of the entities that receive these grants. So whenever my office grants money, federal money, to an organization, we review those organizations at least once a year to make sure the money is being spent correctly. So this may be something that we do with the folks that receive this grant. This is what Congress has asked us to do. So that's the Shuttered Venue Grant. Finally, let's talk just a little bit about normal SBA loans. So when we heard from Plain State Bank at the beginning, they are one of the top lenders in the area, and they normally do these loans called 7A and 504. I know those are wonderful names, but that's what SBA calls them. There's also SBA microloans. So if you or anyone you know have one of those loans, and it's in what we would call a good servicing status, meaning that it's you've paid it and you're current with everything, then what this says, well, we have been paying your loan all year long since COVID started, and we will continue paying your loan for you for 3 months, capped at $9,000 per month, starting in February. So that's great news. So we'll take care of your loan payments for those 3 months. And if you're one of the hardest hit, you can have an additional 5 months. So that's up to 8 more months of payments capped at $9,000 per month. And this is for what we call Well, a good example would be those with really broad sector-wide job losses, such as food service, accommodation, arts, entertainment, recreation, education, laundry, and personal care. So that's not exclusive, but that's an example of the kinds of industries that might get that extra 5 months. So that's very good news. You don't hear about that much in the press, but we have spent billions of dollars supporting existing businesses with their existing SBA loans. Now, these last two bullets are pretty cool. This says, for those of you or for businesses you know of that are actually doing pretty well, you're doing okay. Maybe you make plexiglass barriers or you make personal protective equipment. Your business is doing great right now. Maybe it's time to buy a new building or upgrade some of your machinery or do something else to support expansion of your business. This is the perfect time to pursue a normal SBA loan. This is not a disaster loan. This is a regular SBA loan. Your first 6 months of payments will be paid by the SBA once your loan is approved and dispersed, capped at $9,000 a month. Now that ends September 30th. So if you're thinking you might want some financing for your business right now, this is an absolutely terrific time. Your first 6 months are going to get paid for by the federal government. Happy birthday. Also, there will be no fees on those SBA 7A or 504 loans. That's what's in the page, section 27. Further, when you get what's called an SBA loan for your business, that means SBA guarantees the bank that a certain percentage of that loan will be paid by the SBA if you can't pay back your loan. So let's say Jenna was going to go out and borrow $1 million. Ordinarily, that guarantee would be 75%. Well, now it's 90%. So that means they're far more interested in lending to Jenna because their exposure on that is only $100,000. If Jenna couldn't pay it back, SBA is on the hook for up to $900,000. So that's great news. That means the bank should be more interested in lending to you. They will be partially incentivized to lend to you. For some of our lenders, they do smaller loans called express loans that are up to $350,000. Those have been increased to $1 million with a 75% guarantee. So those are some details you probably don't really care about. The message is, if you are looking for any growth financing right now, looking maybe at acquiring one of your competitors in a building, purchasing new machinery, it is the perfect time. Interest rates are low. We will pay your payments for 6 months. There are no fees. And there's even the ability to, if you have existing debt that is a little troublesome for you, then you may be able to refinance that into what's called a 504 loan. A 504 has part of that loan as a fixed interest rate for 25 years. And you might be able to refinance that debt and just make that more manageable for your business so that your cash flow is not impacted. Then finally, and we can take questions now, I want to point out across the top of the screen here, these 4 organizations are available to help you at no charge. They aren't going to charge you to consult with you about anything to do with your small business because the SBA has already helped pay their bills. They understand PPP and EIDL, and they're getting up to speed on shuttered venue grants and some of these other things, and they are available to assist you. You know that at Lone Star, the closest to you, I believe, you have a small business development center. You have the Houston SCORE organization, about 165 volunteers here that, like you, have run small businesses for a long time, and maybe they still have their business, but they don't need to go to work every day. So they volunteer their time to help other businesses. The WBEA Women's Business Center, so a lot of women business owners to work with women when they work on their businesses. You can do that at WBEA. And then there's a new Women's Business Center. We need them to learn a little bit before they start helping you, but that's the Great Women's Chamber Women's Business Center, and they will probably be able to start helping you next month. So with that, we can take some questions if you like.
Sounds great, Tim. So I already answered one question in the Q&A, and that related to business owners who have 0 employees and only 1099 company as if they're able to apply for the PPP themselves.
Okay, so yeah, in that case, there's some really important things you want to know. First, yes, only you would apply for the PPP. You're telling you have to apply your own PPP. In the eyes of the SBA Internal Revenue Service, they are independent contractors. So you can apply for PPP. You can all do it at the same bank for the sake of argument. What you want to know, though, is that what the IRS views as your income, your paycheck, is your net income on your tax returns. So for you and for your independent contractors, the loan amount is going to be based on what you show as net profit, line 31, on your 1040 form. For me, so about $200 spread out over a year means average $100 a month times 2.5, you get a loan of $2,500. You're probably looking for more relief than that. So PPP might not be the best avenue for you. You just need to deliver PPP to justify a significant enough PPP to make a difference for your business.
Thank you, Tim. Our next question is one we've actually gotten before, and I believe the answer is that we don't need more information. This individual asks if wedding venues qualify for the new Shuttered grants.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't know the answer yet. I'll give you a little bit of quick background. Let me see if I have this still up on one of my 3,000 screens that I have open on my computer. Give me a quick second. I think I do. I do not. Yeah, so there is some detailed verbiage in the Act, and it basically says a performing arts venue. It lists characteristics of a performing arts venue. It says it usually has to sell tickets. It has a mixing console. It has a lighting system. It employs a certain number of people in various capacities like security and a box office, things of that nature. So there's plenty of description in there that describes what we would all might think of as a typical concert venue. So a wedding venue, on the other hand, normally doesn't sell tickets, doesn't have a box office. It's rented by the hour, by the day, or something like that. So it doesn't seem to fall into the exact definition as it's been laid out in the CARES Act. This could be one of those times when the Act says something, then the agency, in this case the SBA, we go back to Congress, to the small business, and there maybe will be a change. I don't think so, but maybe there will be a change. So at the moment, the way I personally read the Act doesn't seem to be in of wedding venues. Give us another day or two to get some more guidance from our folks in Washington and to let us read the Act a little more closely. And maybe we'll find a way that's more meaningful in there to help you justify why you would be one of these shuttered venues.
Okay, Josh Morrison asks if childcare facilities are considered hardest hit, and if there's a list of what hardest hit businesses would be considered.
To my knowledge, there is not a list of hardest hit. That's something that I would like to see get defined better, and I'm sure you would too. But one of the things I was reading to you earlier gave a range of businesses, and one of those was personal service. So I think there's really to the personal services, but I think it's the same spirit. So those organizations, the idea is it's those organizations that have that need density in those businesses before they are able to do well. That they need. I'm trying to find it. Give me a second. I'm scrolling faster than I can read, apparently. Okay, no. All right, well, I don't see it off my place, I guess, in my slides. The hardest hit, that makes sense to me personally. Clearly, daycares have been hit hard. So I would expect that you will fall into that category. The big benefit, if you do, is that means there could be a portion of the money in this budget that is set aside for businesses like yours. But if you think you're going to go after a PPP loan, what I would encourage you to do is go ahead and get started. The applications are online. I don't think you actually need to work on filling one of those out, but you need to work on having the information that goes into it. Here's why you don't necessarily want to fill it out now. If you do, then just do it in pencil or something, because most banks have an online version of that application. And you'll probably be going to their website to type the same information in. So as long as you know what to type in, you're in good shape. Soon, a whole variety of banks and other lending institutions will be able to turn on their ability to accept PPP applications. Want to be ready to do it. If you have a banker you already work with, then I would encourage you to reach out to them, let them know that you're interested. What I think may happen, this happened in the first time we did PPP, is that some of these lenders will say, yeah, we're going to take applications, but only from the people we already dealt with before, or only from existing, etc. So there may be some limitations. So go ahead and contact your banker now and see if they're going to be accepting PPP applications, or to put it differently, if they accept one from you, then grab that application, make sure that you're able to comply with the information that's on it, and then you're ready to go. You should be able to get your application in quickly.
Thank you, Tim. Michael Hilton asks us if he applied for EIDL in April of 2020 and hasn't heard anything, what should he do?
There could be all kinds of reasons. It's very unusual that someone has heard nothing at all. So if you heard nothing at all, send that information along with your application number to my office, and Abby can put the email address in the chat box there, but it's houston@sba.gov, and we will inquire on your behalf. Those disaster loans happen in a completely different part of the SBA. We're not involved with them in my office, but we can interface on your behalf with that organization and see if we can find something out. In most cases, if someone wasn't funded, they got sent a letter by the SBA that said, we've turned down your application, and then they might give you a really ambiguous reason. And actually, there's a reason that the reason is ambiguous. Same thing, if you get that denial letter, you can send that to us and we will help you decipher what it means. And then we'll connect you with one of our partners so they can help you draft a reconsideration request that can go to the Office of Disaster Assistance and hopefully then get you funded.
Okay, perfect. And I did put that email address in the Q&A, houston@sba.gov for questions, and for Michael for you to send us that information. Renee asks us, just to clarify, one can go ahead and apply for a second PPP loan now.
Maybe, and I'll tell you what I mean. If you bank with a minority deposit institution or a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution, if you have a relationship with one of those, you can do that right now. If you don't have that, or if you don't want to start a relationship with them, then beginning next week, other lenders will start to be able to accept. What we're going to do is, rather than turn the entire system on at once, like we did last time, and then there were just thousands and thousands of applications happening simultaneously, this is being a little bit more of a managed process, so it's not quite as frantic. So we can't tell you when your bank that maybe you currently work with will get the ability to start putting their applications in, but I can tell you that most of the banks are ready. So what's a minority deposit institution? Here in Houston, that would be Unity Bank, African American, Golden Bank, Asian American. I think both of those are classified by the United States government as minority deposit institutions. And there are a few CDFIs. I don't know who they are offhand, but we do have that information. Jennifer, we can send that to you.
Thank you, Tim. The next question is, can you further clarify the loan forgiveness form for loans under $150,000? I'm assuming they're referring to the one that's supposed to come out, and where to find the forms.
Yeah, so www.sba.gov. That's the SBA website. You can also do a /PPP, and that should take you straight to the page. But anyway, if you just go to our main page, you're going to see how to navigate through. All those forms are there. All the forms have instructions. None of them are particularly difficult. So the one for $150,000, it doesn't exist yet. That has to be created. It probably won't come online until the end of this month, maybe early next month. So if you've got a PPP under 150, you probably want to use that. An important point, anyone that has a PPP loan, you do not have to file for forgiveness right now. You have 10 months from the end of your covered period to file for forgiveness. So you don't have to hurry. In most people, in most cases, that's probably no sooner than about June, May or June, for the very first PPP borrowers before they're going to have to apply for forgiveness. The benefit of waiting until, let's just pick a date. Let's say wait till Valentine's Day. The benefit of waiting until then is this new form will be created. The new process of running it through or administering it will be created. And you might find out that it's really advantageous for you. there will be no negative to waiting until then. There's no interest accruing on your PPP loan. There are no payments due on your PPP loan. So you're good. You should be able to wait for up to 10 months after the end of your covered period before you have to do anything. Now, you're probably like me. You'd probably like to go ahead and apply for forgiveness and get it over with, get that monkey off your back. But there's no need to do that. It's absolutely okay to wait for another month or two and get all your ducks in a row and make sure you can get the absolute maximum forgiveness.
Thank you, Tim. I did add the link in the chat for the PPP forgiveness page from the SBA.
Good.
So go ahead and take a look at that page, and it'll also let you know which application you would use depending on the amount of your loan. But again, as Tim mentioned, there's no need to rush if you want to wait and see. Our next question is, what documentation is required to qualify for the 25% reduction in gross revenue, and is it required at the time of application?
I've already heard that there are banks that do these automated online applications, and they're already collecting some of that information. And what they are asking for is generally profit and loss statements that show that reduction in revenue. So your P&L for first quarter 2019, your P&L for first quarter 2020, you compare those. If it shows a or greater reduction in revenue, then you're good. Another thing that I know that one bank is asking for is if you can just show with your bank account with that bank that your deposits have dropped over 25%. I'm not telling you that all banks will look at it that way, and that's not really the way the Act is looking at it or that SBA is looking at it. But we're leaving it up to you to define what gross receipts are for your business. So the typical business, you know, Tim's convenience store, it's my sales, right? It's my sales. But if Tim's store is part of a short strip center and I own the whole thing, then my gross receipts is going to be the sales of my convenience store plus the rental income from my other properties. So that may not be what flows through your bank account. That would be reflected on your P&L. So as long as you use some suitable documentation that, let's say, if you have a CPA, ask them, how would they define your first quarter receipts in 1 year versus another year and satisfy the IRS? That would be good. That's exactly what you'd want to do. So it's pretty simple, though. It should be very straightforward for you. I want to mention one thing, Abby, before we go forward. On the topic of forgiveness, we do, I think it's 3 webinars a week out of my office going over forgiveness. There are 3 different approaches to forgiveness. There are various variables in there that might be super important for you to understand. Mainly, this would apply if you have a little bit more complicated situation. Let's say you're a restaurant to have quite a few employees. Let's say you got 150 employees in your restaurant, or maybe you have 2 locations of a restaurant. That's a fairly complicated situation. Well, maybe complicated is not the right word, but complex. So that means you may want to approach forgiveness one particular way. Or if you just have 3 employees and you got a loan for $52,000, that's probably a really simple process. So in that PPP forgiveness webinar, we go over that so you can be equipped with understanding the best way to go forward. My office wants you to get 100% forgiveness on every PPP loans. So if we can help you through our webinars and educate you, then we want to do that.
Thank you for that, Tim. And just to add to that, I've added our website to the chat. So feel free to visit to view a copy of this presentation, copy of other presentations, including the PPP forgiveness presentation, as well as signing up for our newsletter. That's where we'll send information related to updates on the programs and new dates for our webinars. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions in the Q&A or the chat. Did we want to add any final remarks from the chamber?
Yes, we would. We are currently working with our financial institutions and things we're doing for us is to collect listings that will be participating. So we've currently got in touch with our institutions, and as we get more information and as it's with those banks, putting it there. So we need a resource for financial institutions providing the PPP loans. You can go to that link. I'll be emailing this out to all of the people that participated today so that you have that as a resource, as a link to the slides that were presented today by Tim, so that you have that. And we've also recorded this webinar and we'll have that available too. So we're here as a resource and we're here to help you. So if you have questions, please let us know. If you think of a question after this, shoot it to us and we'll get it over to Tim and Abby so that they can help you with some resolution to those. Tim, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have one final thought. I already mentioned it, but I'll mention it again. This might seem daunting, but the whole point of this is for this to be there to help your business. We want to help you access these benefits. We want to help forgiveness. One of the best things you can do besides sign up for our email list, make sure you know about what we have going on, is work with one of our resource partners. I showed you the Small Business Development Center. You've got one right up at Lone Star, the SCORE organization, and the Women's Business Center. And we've got 2 of those. They are available to help. They're very good at what they do, and they can make a difference. So give us a chance to help you. We want you to succeed. We don't just want you to get through this. We want you to thrive.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Abby, for joining us today and being here with us and answering questions. We would like to thank our presenting sponsor today for this webinar. And for everyone joining us, thanks for tuning in. And please let us know if you have any questions. We will help you get through this and be successful. So everybody, have a great day. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you in person in the near future as it's safe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.